What are we doing? And
I do a show called Sport Talk, and we're focusing on the Sinatra Celebrity Classic, so it's going to be mostly about you opening for him and just some anecdotes and things like that, if you're cool with that.
so I'll give you a little background. I am bad boy for the Cubs once a year. I go and I'm bad boy for like 4 or 5 games. I've been doing it for a lot of years. I announced for Harry Carey when he had the stroke. I'm really like the sports comedian of America now because I MC all the major roasts. Harry Carey, Mike Ditka, Bart Starr, all the Mickey Mantle. I was always master summers at those roasts and those funny. So I'm involved in sports a lot. Before you start rolling.
Good.
Or we're probably already rolling.
That's fine.
I want to give you the sports. And I play on the Celebrity Players Tour. But we'll talk about
the golf tournament that goes up to Tahoe.
Yeah, there's 12 events this year. I'm the only stand-up comedian on that tour. But it's athletes. But we'll talk about that if you want to.
Okay,
How much time do you have?
I have as much time as you want to talk.
We'll talk.
I'm hoping for some anecdotes and things like that because you were with the guy for years.
Wherever you want.
All right, we good? Spike Measer here with Tom Dreesen. Tom, I know you opened up for the man for a long, long time. That's got to be an honor.
Yeah, 13 years I toured as Frank Sinatra's opening act in 45, 50 cities a year. It was the most exciting tour, an exciting part of my life, to be perfectly honest with you.
Did he have that aura, that presence, not just on stage but off?
Yeah, there was nobody like Frank Sinatra. Wherever Frank Sinatra went, there was incredible energy that would permeate the city. I mean, we performed, like I say, in 45, 50 cities a year. If we were in Omaha, if we were in Detroit, if we were in New York, if we were in Chicago, if we were in Lincoln, Nebraska, or Worcester, Massachusetts, it didn't matter. The whole town was abuzz. Sinatra's in town, Sinatra's in town. Cab drivers were talking about it, barbers, beauticians at the beauty shop. Sinatra's in town. And that's where the excitement was all the way up to the performance and even afterward.
Take me back to the very first time that you met Frank Sinatra.
Well, the first time I met him was at rehearsal of the first time I ever performed with him. But the way I got the gig, and everybody always used to ask me, by the way, I say I only went into show business so I could use the word gig in a sentence. Nobody ever does it. Brain surgeons don't say, I got a gig tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock, But anyhow, I was working at Caesars in Lake Tahoe with Smokey Robinson, and Frank Sinatra was appearing next door. So I wanted to see Frank's show. I've always been a huge fan. This was years ago, so I rush over to Harrah's to catch Frank's show, and as I'm running into the showroom, the vice president of Harrah's Hotel, a man named Holmes Hendrickson, is standing there talking to a big guy with a cigar in his mouth. And he said, Tommy, come here. And I rushed over there, and he said, Tommy, this is Mickey Rudin. and I recognized the name. That was Frank Sinatra's lawyer, as well as Barbara Streisand's lawyer. So I said, oh, hi, Mr. Rudin. And Holmes Hendrickson said, Mickey, I think Tom Dreesen would make a great opening act for Frank Sinatra. And the lawyer got a pained look on his face, and he looked at me, he said, hey, kid, if I gave you a week with Frank, would you want more than $50,000? I said, Mr. Rudin, put it this way, if you gave me a week with Frank, would you want more than $50,000? So he started laughing. He said, I like this kid. And a week later, I got a call to work with Frank for 1 week at the Golden Nugget in Atlantic City. So I took the gig, of course, and worked with him. The second day that I was performing with him, he invited me to dinner with he and his wife Barbara, and we were out to dinner. In the middle of the meal, I'll never forget, he was eating, he stopped, he put his knife and fork down, and he looked across the table at me, he said, I like your material and I like your style. I'd like you to do a couple other dates with me if you're interested. And I didn't say, let me check my calendar, Frank. And I said, oh yeah, are you kidding me? And that turned into 13 years, But the first time I met him was at rehearsal, and he was just, everything about him. There was an aura around Frank Sinatra. He had this incredible energy, and I'll tell you something that is so true. In all the years I toured with Frank Sinatra, I may have attended 1,000 parties with him. But I can remember 100 parties where the room was packed with the most powerful people in the entertainment world, the most powerful people in the business world, and the most powerful people in the sports world were in those rooms. And when Frank Sinatra walked into the room, all eyes went there. All energy went to Frank Sinatra. If the President of the United States was in the room, trust me, even he would turn to look, because Frank Sinatra was in the room. And not that Frank demanded that, but he commanded it for some reason. He was Sinatra. There'll never be another like him.
Many people say, oh, nobody's irreplaceable, but I think we have to change that now.
Yeah, I would think so. I don't know of, after Frank died, I alone received over 500 phone calls from all around the world. people calling from, I had to put 3 people in my home to answer the calls. But a strange thing happened across the land and overseas, in Albania, in London, in Spain, in Ireland, in Italy, and in the United States. Women were calling talk shows and saying, something strange has happened to my husband. He came home yesterday and he went to his room and he cried like a baby for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. He wept like a baby, and he never met Frank Sinatra. Now, I think the reason for that is that, of course, Frank's music gave us solace in your loneliness and stuff. But more than that, Frank Sinatra was the man who looked at the whole world and said, no, 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 no. I won't do it your way. I'll do it my way. Now, we all want to be a guy like that. And some people were able to achieve it in their lifetime, most not. But most guys, if they couldn't be that way, they wanted Frank to do it for them. They vicariously lived through Frank Sinatra. Tell him, Frank, tell them all. You won't go on like the song says, and not the words of one who kneels. You know, do it for us, Frank. So when Frank died, a huge part of us died too. And also, if Frank Sinatra could die, then so will we one day. And not that we didn't always know that, but those who love Frank Sinatra wanted to believe that he was invincible. And alas, he's not.
You mentioned My Way in a couple of lyrics. Is that your favorite song?
There are so many. I'll tell you something Frank Sinatra once said. When I said to him, what's your favorite song? He said, the last one I sang, you know. And so every song is my favorite of Sinatra's. But a couple have special meaning to me because of certain parts in my life when that music gave me solace, you know. But in the wee small hours of the morning, there's always one of those touching songs. And of course, One for My Baby, you know, because he was a saloon singer. And those are the songs that meant the most to me, because I grew up on the streets, shining shoes in taverns, from the time I was 6 years old till I was 12, you know, setting pins in bowling alleys. You know, I grew up poor. And Frank Sinatra once said to the New York Times, they asked him, why Tom Dreesen? Why do you have Tom Dreesen as your opening act? He said, you mean besides the fact that he's funny? And the guy said, yeah, besides the fact that he's funny. He said, I'm a saloon singer. He said, if I'm a saloon singer, and I am, he said, then Tom Dreesen is a saloon comedian. By that I mean we're both a couple of neighborhood guys. And I've always treasured that, you know, because, and those are the songs, the saloon songs that meant the most to me.
For as great a man as he was and as much as he accomplished, he was still humble, wasn't he?
In so many ways, because he couldn't take a compliment. You could never say to Frank Sinatra, gee, great show. He'd say, oh, yeah, it was a good crowd. You know, he wasn't very good at taking compliments. At giving them, he was. But, yeah, he was humble. And I believe, a lot of people wouldn't believe that of him. There was an arrogance about Frank Sinatra. But in order to be a superstar in any endeavor, I say you have to be arrogant/humble. Arrogant enough to think that you're going to walk out in front of 20,000 people and hold them in the palm of your hand, and humble enough to appreciate the hell out of it when they give it to you. Sinatra had both of those.
Now, I know you're involved quite a bit in sports as well, going around the country hosting high-profile special events. Is there anybody else that you've come across in all your years that even approaches the aura of Sinatra? Are there other special people?
No. I'll tell you why. Frank Sinatra, in one of his earliest interviews, said this, and I had to remind him one time. It was an interview I heard when I was a young kid. Before I went into service, he was on a radio interview, and he said 4 things you need to be a superstar as a boy singer. And he used the term boy singer because in the big band era, there was girl singer, boy singer. But he said 4 things you need to be a superstar as a boy singer. Number 1, young women want to make love to you. Number 2, older women want to mother you. Number 3, little kids wish you were their dad. And number 4, the guys want to hang out with you. Now, every singer I've ever known had 3 of those qualities, but that 4th, the guys wanted to hang out with Sinatra en masse. En masse. In the end, the audience was as many men as there were women. The guys wanted to see Frank as much as the women did. Sinatra made this town of Las Vegas. There's no doubt about it. He made multimillionaires out of all those guys, because he brought in the high rollers. He brought in the big guys. Give me 500 Sinatra fans and you can have 50,000 of Barbra Streisand's fans. No disrespect to Barbara, but I want those guys who gamble. The wise guys in this town, the guys, I shouldn't say the wise guys, the guys who were smart enough to know the business, they knew that it's the drop in the pit that counts. You know, the drop in the pit. What's the drop in the pit? What was gambled last night? When Sinatra came in, one man. In the years I toured with Sinatra, every time we went to the casinos, they were sold out. One night in Atlantic City, one night, one man lost $1,750,000. One man, a real estate guy from Florida. In this town, and it's in the Guinness Book of Records, at the Golden Nugget, a man named Danny Schwartz dropped $5 million in one night. One Sinatra fan, and the place was packed.
So we're talking about a guy that didn't just affect audiences and people's emotions and lives. He affected economies, basically, right?
There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. If they don't build a monument to Frank Sinatra on this strip, then there's no justice. Then we all have short memories. All those guys, they should build a monument to Frank Sinatra. That should be called Frank Sinatra Drive, because he made Las Vegas. Frank Sinatra, when he appeared here, do you know that one time he sold out at Caesar's Palace? And you know, if you make it big in our business, they put on the marquee Tom. Then you put your last name, Sammy. They don't put your last name. Sinatra appeared at Caesar's Palace. The marquee said, "He's here." And he sold out for 2 weeks.
That's pretty huge when you're identified by one name and then not even your real name. He's here.
Not only that, when we worked downtown at the Golden Nugget, when Sinatra came back, it was the only time he ever left the strip. When he came back to the strip, all the other hotels put up big signs on the marquee, "Welcome back, Frank," even though he wasn't appearing there, because even his overflow did good business for them.
How did it come about that Sinatra was never introduced on stage? All of a sudden, the crowd was quiet, and then here comes the man, and it was just bedlam.
Because the oldest cliche in show business is, here's a man who really needs no introduction, and Frank Sinatra really didn't need an introduction. I tell you, I worked with him in many cities, but my hometown is Chicago. One of the most exciting moments I ever remembered of him being on stage was in Chicago. They put $8 million into the Chicago Theater and renovated it. It's my hometown. I went out and I performed, and for about, excuse me, are you running out of tape? Okay. I'll do this again. I saw him make a sign. In Chicago, one of the most exciting performances I've ever seen was in Chicago, my hometown. They put $8 million into the Chicago Theater, renovated it, and we were the first show there. I performed and they had an intermission, and then all of a sudden, after 20 minutes, the lights went down low. No introduction. Frank Sinatra walked out center stage, and all that Chicago audience stood and cheered and cheered and cheered. He waited for them, they cheered and cheered, and then he looked around and he said, "This is my kind of town, Chicago." And the roof came off. I mean, the roof came off. And when he'd go to New York and do New York, New York, same thing.
I want to touch on some sports with you a little bit. I know you subbed for Harry Carey when he was sick. You've done a lot of sporting events. Who of the sports figures is a special guy?
Well, you know, I mean, obviously, Johnny Bench, Mike Schmidt, those guys are, you know, John Elway, Dan Marino, they're all my heroes. And you know, when I was growing, I mean, of course, Ernie Banks, my God, what he did for our Chicago Cubs, when only like MVP back-to-back, a team that was in last place both years. I mean, incredible athlete. But you know, there's so many people I admire in the sports world. I now play on a Celebrity Players Tour. It's a golf tour. It's the fastest growing golf tour out there. It's a corporate delight. It's basketball, baseball, football, hockey players, past and present, and show business people that are 10 handicap or below. So it's John Elway, Dan Marino, Mario Lemieux, Johnny Bench, Mike Schmidt. It's Steve Bartkowski, Jim McMahon. It's Raleigh Fingers. It's Michael Jordan. It's 32 Hall of Famers. And in show business, it's Jack Wagner, the soap opera star.
Sure.
It's Brian Gumbo, Eddie Marinero, Smokey Robinson. I'm the only stand-up comedian on the tour, although Dan Quayle's on the tour, so the Democrats are arguing we have to claim two. But Dan's a great golfer and a good guy. And I'm the leading money winner on that tour of stand-up comedians. I'm the only stand-up comedian on the tour, but...
Well, it sounds like you got a lot going on. I've always enjoyed your work. I know you remain humble as well. I know you appreciate the good crowds. You're always congenial and cordial with the media, and I thank you very much for being with us.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, many people thought that my managers and agents thought I should leave Frank Sinatra after 6 months because they thought that it would hurt my career. In the shadow of such a huge star, you could never become a star yourself. It never mattered to me because Christopher Morley, the author, once said, success is living the life you want. I'm living the life. I toured with Frank Sinatra, and I go to every sporting event that I can, and so I'm living the life I want. Thank you for the interview.
And you don't change a thing, do you?
I try not to.
Tom Dreesen, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks
a
for
lot.
having me.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Tom. That was cool.